everybody. Welcome to the Pathfinding simple grid system for Unity. I'm just going to go over basically some of the features here, what this pathfinding system can do, overview. I'll show you some of the game objects, the code, and why everything's set up how it is. So I want you to be able to take this and modify it to make it whatever your game needs. And I really hope this is something that can help you. I've personally spent a long time trying to get pathfinding to work. I think 17 years ago or so, I started my first pathfinding attempt, and it just was terrible, and it didn't work at all. And about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I basically discovered this system, whatever, and this is just kind of an improvement of there. It's not the most amazing system ever. It's not going to compete with, a big system for, like for large maps. It's not A-star efficient, anything like that. All it is it's going to be simple, and hopefully easy for you to integrate into your game. So that's the goal here, and it just works. It finds the lowest path, or the quickest path to tile. As long as your game is relatively small in terms of the grid, this is going to be a system that I hope can help you. So let's take a look at everything. First thing you'll notice is there's only 5 scripts. I wanted to keep it quite simple with the scripts. Here, I'll move this out of the way so you can actually see that. The easiest, or an easy one to look at, is Subtile, and Subtile doesn't even have a traditional class. It's basically serializable and an enum. So this is Subtile. That's basically so we can look at our neighbors. So every tile has, potentially 4 neighbors if they exist, and we're looking if they're blocked, what their tile is, their num. So basically that's just a subclass for that. So then ePathfind type is an enum, just basically a selection, so we can see the 4 types. You can choose which type of pathfinding. It's this one right here. So you can choose one of those 4 options, and I'll go over those more in depth. Next, we'll look at walls, and this is just a simple script to show walls. Every tile has 4 walls, and you can see that right here. This is the wall script, and if you want to actually see what that looks like, we can say, okay, let's add a wall there. That's the top wall, that's the right one, that's the bottom, that's the left, and we can disable them. Basically, they're always there. They're just disabled by default. So that's what the walls is doing. The character script, that does a little more work. Basically, it's referencing the grid manager. Big is if you want to make your character bigger, which we'll get into in a minute here. These are just for movement. This is kind of the team color for hovering, so the tiles will change to that. And we already kind of went over, or we're going to go over some of the other stuff here in a little bit here. Basically, update, that's the body looking. It's going to be looking towards where you're going, or towards the next tile, rather. So it's going to constantly be rotating based on its movement. The movement, we're basically going, we're taking a little step here, and moving towards the position, and we're checking the distance. If the distance is under this, which means basically we've arrived at the next tile, we're going to change tiles, and we're going to see, oh, do we still have any more in this path to go, or did we finish? If we have more to go, we're going to go, let's go to the next tile. Otherwise, we're finished, and basically the movement's over. This is move tile. So basically, when you right-click on a tile to move there, that's going to go to this function. It's just going to deparent these moves and basically say, okay, these need to go here, and we're actually going to say, okay, this is the next tile you need to go to, which is the target tile right there. All right, and yeah, and we're going to say we're moving as well. The next one we go to here is tile, and that is where some of the action happens here. This is the tile, the basic tile here. These are the 5 buttons right here, and this is just a Unity editor extension here. We added those 5 buttons, so you can add the walls if you want to make, a custom pathfinding setup. And we also have, they reference the grid manager, and this is the tile num. They go by the default naming convention here, so they're named properly whenever you make a new grid. So like this one says 2, 5, and that's the X is 2 and the Y is 5. So pretty simple, and it references the image, and this is basically because these are buttons and images. Now right now the buttons don't have anything set up. You can add something to the buttons if you want. If you want to say, okay, I left click this tile, I want to select that tile or the character, the unit on it. That's why the button's important if you want to have that kind of system. But right now there's no need for it, so I left that one blank. The image, that's gonna basically basically change. You can see that right there. So we know, where we can select, or if it'll be red if you can't select there, or it'll show the path, things like that. So the event trigger, that's for on hover. So when it hovers, it goes to the function on hover, or hover tile. So that's the basics of that, and it's the model of the tile is just basically a very simple cube, flattened cube. We want to go to grid manager right here, and in the grid we can obviously make the grid. You can click that, you can change it to any kind of size we want, and that's going to show the number of tiles there, and all these tiles are auto-populated. It's going to clear the last one, so make sure you save it somehow, or do a new scene, or come up with your own saving system if you want to actually save your grid. If you put a lot of work in, maybe you're putting a lot of walls in, and because it'll just flat out delete those every tile when you click make grid. There's a special feature here if you want to add shapes to it. For example, let's say you're making a giant grid, 50 by 50. Look at that thing. That one's 2,500 tiles, and you want to do something special with it. The original idea here was to be able to make shapes. I've only so far done one, but you're welcome to take the idea and roll with it. So now you can see it's a much bigger grid. It's a circle now. So you can make a star or whatever kind of thing you want. So all that's doing is taking the middle and doing our little radius out, and then basically cutting off anything that's not in that radius. All right, and let's look further at this grid here. If you notice, this is actually a canvas, and it's a world space canvas attached to the main camera, and inside there is a grid layout group. And the reason I did a grid layout group is because, here, let's make a new grid here. Let's make a 12 by 12. All right. Reason it's a canvas and a grid layout group is because it will take this cell size, which I leave default at 100 by 100, and then the spacing 5 by 5. You can change it to whatever you want, but it kind of does the math for you. You could manually do that math if you want, of saying, okay, this 0 needs to go here, and 0 3 we're going to put 3 feet over plus a spacing. But I'm just like, oh, let's just let the canvas and grid layout group do that work. So it's going to take this 100 plus the 5, so 105. And it's going to multiply that by this number here, or this number here, the 12. So it's going to be 12 times 105, and that's going to equal 1260. So basically, it just calculates that out for you, so it knows where to go. If this was not 1260, you could see it wouldn't be a traditional, grid. Like it wouldn't be set up quite right. It'd be uneven. So anyway, that's the purpose of that. The prefab tile, that's very important. I just always leave that alone. That's just something, all these other tiles are going to copy from that prefab tile. It's not even a prefab, but if, you can make it a prefab, I guess, if you want. But yeah, all these tiles come from this one. So just leave that one alone. It's always going to stay disabled. And if you ever want to modify anything, you'll want to modify that tile, so all these ones will be copied from there. Now let's look at the code of the grid manager here. First of all, we have this is the editor part of things, the make grid button and the make circle button. The V2 grid, we saw that this is just the X and the Y. And the only thing we haven't really talked about is the direction order, which I'll go over to momentarily here. The update, basically, that's going to take if you click a right mouse button and all the conditions are met, you're hovering over the right tile and whatnot, it's going to basically say, okay, move. And that's all that's doing. Let's go over some examples. Let's actually just open this. Now this is just the basic, simple pathfinding setup. It's gonna go, if you want to see it here. This is once per turn. And what does that mean? That means basically whenever the game starts, or whenever this character gets to this tile that it's going to, it's going to calculate the path to every single tile there is. So it's going to find the fastest route to every single tile. All right. This is pretty simple, right? Let's make this smaller so we can see the whole thing. Now let's go to the second one, which is max tiles. Okay. Max tile. Oh, actually, yeah, let's do that. All right, let's go. Let's do a bigger one for that one, though. 20 by 20, and we'll move the camera over. Make it a little bigger. I normally use an orthographic, but you can certainly use whatever system you want for that. All right, so this character is set up for 7 max tiles. So basically, for a bigger grid, this is something you're definitely going to want to consider. If you had this 20 by 20 grid set up, it's 400 tiles. That's a little bit bigger than this system is meant for. So you definitely want to limit it somehow. And there's ways you could certainly do it by preloading everything, but honestly, that's not a very good system if you want to have a lot of moving characters, unless your whole scene is static and one moving character. So this is a way to kind of counteract that. It's going to limit the number of tiles you can go to. So it's going to be reasonable, and let's try it with some objects here. There's some walls. Gonna make a few obstacles here. All right. Now this is more likely what you would see for most games. It might be a dungeon or levels with skinnier pathways or something like that. Not every game is going to be just a giant square setup. So this is going to be a more real application here. And now we can look at this with some of the other systems here. Let's look at the on click. All right. Now this way, it will not give you a normal path. It will only move to a tile once you click it. So it won't do any calculations before you click it. And it shouldn't be red there. I'll fix that before I send the final release. But so if you have a giant grid, let's say bigger than this, and you click something, it might freeze for a couple seconds as it calculates, because it's calculating to that specific path. It's not going to have to calculate to every tile, but since it doesn't know which tile you're going to, it's not doing any calculations before you click it. It's not going to show you that path. And I'm going to show you one more, and this is the on hover one. This one you generally also want to keep. All of them except for the max tiles you want to keep to probably under 140 tiles, but let's just show a basic 10 by 10 for this one. All right, let's do that. And this is the on hover. And what that's going to do is going to be much more of a real-time system. Let's say you have a lot of moving things, you have other characters moving, or maybe it's not necessarily a turn-based game or something like that. You might want to consider a more real-time system like this. And this is just an example. This will update every time you hover to a different tile. So every time you're moving your mouse to a different tile, it's going to calculate to that specific tile. And there is another benefit of this one. It's going to go to the right direction initially. When it has to calculate tiles to every single tile because it doesn't know yet where you're going, it's just going to kind of go on all four directions. So it's going to it's going to give you the quickest path, but it might not be the exact path you wanted. So if you're going up 1 and over 4, instead of going over 4 and up 1, it's going to do the up 1 and over 4 or something to that extent. Where if you click it, it's going to be like, why'd the character go up then over since it had to go so far over? You'd have expected to go over first. So this actually helps with that because it knows exactly which tile you're going to, but there's just a lot more calculation involved in it. So there's good and bad with each one. It just depends on your game system, how much calculation you want, how often you want it to do those calculations. So I just wanted to give you 4 options, and you can do with them what you like, whatever fits your game the best. Grid Manager. This is where most of the activity happens here. Inside the Grid Manager, we have this editor extension here, and that's just basically holds those 2 buttons there, the Make Grid and Make Circle. And they go down here to Make Grid and Make Circle. Make Grid. Alright, and in Make Grid, it's going to clear all the old tiles, and it's going to go through the X and the Y. Whatever you set up there, the X and the Y, and it's going to basically create the game object, instantiate it from the base prefab tile we had there. And it's going to name it, and it's going to basically set up X and Y. And after it's done with that, we want to make sure we create all the tiles first, because we can't assign a neighbor, because if it hasn't been created, you create tile 1, and it's like there's no neighbors. What can we do with that? You can't do it. So we create all the tiles here first, and then we go through and assign all the neighbors. The up, right, down, left. And in the past, I had it where it could actually do diagonals too, but this system is just not efficient enough for that, to be blunt, unless you have a very, very tiny tile. It just gets exponentially more calculations. So that's why I just left it as this system right here. To make circle, all that's doing is finding a radius, and it's taking 0.68 the max distance from the center, and if you want a more closely perfect circle, you could do down to 0.5. That's just going to get rid of more tiles, so it's going to be a little smaller. So, but 0.68 is going to get rid of a few and make it more close to a circle. It's just not going to be a perfect circle. And remember, the more tiles you have, the closer it's going to be to a circle. All right, and we can go to Start Game. This is actually something that happens in Start. It goes to Start Game. And it's going to get a random tile, and it's going to place your character on the tile. And we haven't gone over Care Big yet. Let's go over that real quick. You have an option here, which is, I think, actually pretty cool. Let's pretend you have a big boss character here. Let's open the example scene for the big care. And no, we don't want to save that. Now we have a big boss character here. All right, it's going to randomly place him on a tile, and oh, look at that. He takes up 4 tiles. He's going to take the average of those 4 tiles. Oh, but we can't go to the other side because it's not a small character. So if you want to be able to run away from boss characters, if you want them to only go to certain corridors, you have a giant dragon or ogre or whatever it is. So you want to separate those from the smaller characters. This is kind of a neat way to do that. One thing you got to be a little bit careful of with the big characters is when you're starting the game, it's just randomly giving the character a tile. You're gonna want to assign the tiles however it suits your games. But because it's being random, it might give the big character that tile, or it might give them inside a wall. And since it needs 4 tiles, it's gonna give you an error. So if it goes to the wrong tile, and you get an error, don't worry about it, just restart it or assign the tile another way other than through this random system. The small characters usually don't have problems unless you have a blocked off area that you don't want it in. But just know that that's the way that these demos are set up. We can look at the Find Paths Static, which is basically once per turn or the max tile pathfinding system, basically. So when you are trying to find a path with this one, it's going to look at a path to every single available tile. Now that's can be a lot of tiles. That's why you want to keep it to a small number of tiles. It's going to take the current character's tiles. It's going to clear all the tiles' paths, and it's going to create a brand new empty path, and then it's going to say, okay, let's go look at all these static paths. Now it's going to look at all the neighbors around that one, and it's going to kind of spread out, and it's going to say, all right, basically, does that tile exist? Is it not blocked? And it's going to make sure the tile hasn't already been checked, so we're not going to go back and forth a million times. We're going to look for the path lowest. Basically, is this current path that we're on that we keep adding to, is it lower than the one the tile already has before? So let's say we go up here and over here, and this path, it took three tiles to get to it. And then it comes from over here, it goes down, up, and over right here, and then it gets back to this tile, and it's going to say, okay, this one has 7 tiles to this path. Is the 7 going to be lower than the 3? No, it's not, so we'll just forget that path. That's a garbage path. All right, so, and you know what? What's really funny is when I was working on this a little, like about a month ago, like this is kind of slow. It's like it's a little bit too much lag, so I'm thinking, okay, I think we're kind of being inefficient with this part. So it's like it's saying this path's 3 and this one's 3. This one keeps going because they're even, or this one is 2 and this one's 3. Let's keep going, and then they'll be even. But I'm like, wait a minute, we're already that's equal to the efficiency already. We can cut that out. So I add this +1 here, and I'm thinking, okay, it's gonna save us a little bit of, it's gonna get rid of a few calculations. And at that time, I was looking at the calculations, and it was 896,000 for this particular grid. It was doing 896,000 calculations for about the farthest one. And when I added that +1, it went down to 1,500. And that's 600 times less, or if you want to, have a really big sounding number, 60,000% less calculations. 60,000% less calculations just by adding this +1. It's like that's line from Lord of the Rings. Even the smallest hobbit can make a difference. No, that's not a great accent. Even the smallest number can make a difference. Okay, anyway, and then we're going to basically go on to the next path. It's basically going to add this tile and keep going. Okay, so the only other one here is the other two, which is the on hover and the on click pathfinding, and they're both very similar. There's just a couple minor differences. This one is saying, okay, we're not going to look at every single tile. We're only going to try to find the path to this specific tile, which may have a lot less. It may have similar comparable numbers depending on how many routes it has to take to get there, but it theoretically could have a lot less calculations involved just because it doesn't have to look to every tile. It's going to say, what's the best route to this tile? And one of the cool things about this one is it's going to find the best looking path to this tile too, not just the lowest. If there's 2 that are equal, it's theoretically going to be a better looking path, because it's going to say if we have to go up 7 and over 1, it's not going to go over 1 then up 7. It's going to go up 7 then over 1, which just looks better aesthetically. And that's what this part is doing here. It's going to say what's the longest route, and we're going to look at that one first. Not necessarily we're going to go that one first, because it could be blocked or some other reason. But we're going to look at that one first, and that's going to save, hopefully, calculation time and make the path look better. But it's also, this is still for small grids, real time and such. All right, so that's what the direction order is. Which way should we look first, second, third, and fourth? And the only one we really care about is the first one, because that's the big one. And the real time is very similar. It just has a couple different if-then statements. Because we're looking for the actual tile's lowest rather than every one. So we're saying, okay, this path that's going way over here, this tile's never been checked before, but this path is already bigger than the goal one. We've already made it to the goal, so let's just cut that out. So it just saves calculations. And then we also have hover tile. That's just what happens. It's just going to basically change which tile you're looking at, and it's going to change the colors, so kind of whether it's going to be yellow or blue or red, basically. And right now it's only allows you to change the hover when the character's moving. You don't want to basically be changing all these numbers and the target tile and everything when the character's moving, or it's going to mess everything up. You would have to have a separate system for that if you want to actually be able to change it when it's moving. which is certainly possible. It's just you'll have to add a few more things there if you want to do that. So hopefully that gives you a basic idea of everything this system is capable of, what it can do, what it can't do, and how you can actually use it to your game's advantage. I really hope it provides value to you, and if you have questions, if I can do more to show you how to do this differently, if I can add a feature, whatever I can do to bring value to you and whatever software you're working on with this, just let me know. Reach out to me. Yeah, and I hope this works well for you, and have a great day.